All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the finals of our virtual debate tournament. My name is Jean-Michel, and I will be the moderator for this session. I'd like to first thank everyone who was able to show up. Good evening, everyone. To show up for this event. As you tournament. My name is. As you probably might know, this event was organized by iDebate in partnership with Irvine Valley Debate Society, and then also the Tanzania Debate Union, and Coach Itu from South Africa, and then the Strathmore University debate team. We're very excited because this weekend we had debaters from 4 countries that have competed on different motions. And this evening, we have the finals. And in the finals, we have 2 teams. We have Team Rwanda on the affirmative, and then we have Team USA on the negative. I'd like to read out the names of the teams so that we can give them a round of applause or just, snaps wherever you are. On the affirmative, we have Team Rwanda, and Team Rwanda is made up of Nej Ikuzo, Bertrand Shimo, and Manzi Joshua. So congratulations to all the 3 speakers. On Team Negative, we have Ian Breyer, we have Mia Lampin, and then we have Gontam Krishnamakur. And I'm sorry if I killed your name, but you can tell us how you pronounce it once you come on. But let's give them a round of applause for the 3 speakers from Team USA. I'd like to give the motion for this debate, and then I'll let the head judge, Elnam, to start the debate. So the motion for this debate is that vaccines for COVID-19 should be divided among countries based on population. Vaccines for COVID-19 should be divided among countries based on population. And on the affirmative, we have Team Rwanda. On the negative, we have Team USA. And with that said, I'd like to give the floor to Elnam to proceed with this debate.
Thank you, Jean-Michel. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this virtual debate tournament. First of all, I would like to congratulate all the teams that participated in the other rounds that happened over the weekend. And I'd also like to congratulate the teams that made it to the finals, Team Rwanda and Team USA. You all did a great job. We're so proud of you, and thank you very much for participating. So without further ado, like Jean-Michel said, today's motion states that vaccines for COVID-19 should be divided among countries based on population. Right, so every speaker is going to have 5 minutes, and we're going to have 2 minutes for cross-examination. And expect respect and understanding and calmness. And like Jean-Michel said again, expect everyone who's following on Zoom. If you're a viewer or just joining, I request that you keep your mics off so that we may understand well. And that, so I hope this becomes educative and entertaining to all of us. Without further ado, if you have no other questions, let's start with the first speaker, affirmative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. And my name is Bertrand Shimo, and I'm the first speaker on the affirmative side, with a motion saying that COVID-19 vaccines should be divided among countries based on the population. So if I start by defining the terms, a vaccine is a chemical substance that is used to stimulate and provide the immunity to the body against a certain disease. So COVID-19 is a pandemic that emerged in the Chinese city of Wuhan in 2019, and it was caused by a new or novel virus called corona. The population is an entire pool of people from which a sample is drawn. So we're saying that we're strongly affirming that the vaccine should be distributed based on the population. Why? Rich and powerful nations have rushed to lock up the supply of multiple vaccine candidates. And when it happens, some are hoarding vaccines, purchasing many times more doses than they need. And this leaves some countries, mostly those at risk, behind in the vaccines queue or not having any at all. So this, our side is calling this vaccine nationalism, but if we base on the population, it will be the best and fair approach of vaccinating the whole world and getting out peacefully out of this raging pandemic. Why am I saying this? First of all, when one country is vaccinated, it also even another is safe. If you're safe, then your neighbor is safe. If you're not safe, then you can also contaminate your neighbor. So delaying access to vaccines for some countries, most of them has the higher population, is ultimately many times more costly. The pandemic will rage on, crippling the global economy, and new mutations might also occur, just like it occurred in South Africa recently, where there was a new COVID-19 variant. So if we vaccinate people based on the population, we'll not be vaccinating only those people, and we'll also be vaccinating everywhere, because when some people are safe, even their neighbors are safe. So why am I saying that we should base on the population? Because these countries with a higher number of population are the ones whose probability of movement is high, probability in trade, probability in different essential services. But if in those countries whose high probability they're vaccinated, then the whole country is also vaccinated. Second, the COVID-19 has had a greater impact on highly populated countries than those with low population. Why am I saying that? When you look at a list of countries that have a higher number of population, those are also the countries who are worstly hit. Those are also among the countries who are worstly hit by the pandemic. First, India. India is the second country with the highest number of population, and surprisingly, it is the second country which is worst hit by the COVID-19 vaccine, having 11 million infections as of today, according to the World Meters Global Status of COVID-19. The United States of America, the third country with the highest number of population, having 28 million infections as of today. Brazil, the sixth country with the highest number of highest population in the world, having 10 million infections as of today. Let's not forget Russia, the ninth highest populated country in the world, having 4 million COVID-19 infections as of today. Of course, according to the World Meters Global Status of COVID-19. And another thing I'd like to add is that according to NPR, when the NPR.org, when the vaccines are going to be distributed in the United States, one of the heads of the CDC announced that they have taken the decision to distribute the vaccines based on the states with the higher population. And he said that that is the best and fairest approach that can be used. And also, this is not applicable in the CDC in the US only. It's also applicable in the World Health Organization's vaccination mechanism. It has advised all countries. It has advised the world, and even their task force is advocating to give vaccines to the country who have basing on the population. So basing on the population are mainly based on the highest, but also it can be on the lowest depending on the critical, depending on the infections of the country, because a country can have low infections, but of course have the highest number. So we will count the population and the cases, both of the two will go together. Like if a country has a lowest number, a lower population, but a higher number of cases, you can't consider it with the country with like a highest number of people, but with the lowest COVID-19 cases. So both are intertwined. Like if Rwanda has 15K confirmed cases out of 11 million people, and US has has maybe like 20K confirmed cases with 320 million population, then it is understandable that we will then base on critical cases. So we don't want people to confuse our motion. We are advocating for both the high and low number of population, but of course taking into consideration the infections in the country. Thank you very much. That was all I had, and I'd like now to receive the cross-ex.
Negative side, do you have anything for cross-examination?
Yes. So great speech. I have a couple questions. First off, you kind of say at the end of your speech that you're both going to have by case as well as population. Is that correct?
What I said is this. It's very simple and clear. I said, if you compare the US, like let's say the US has 320 million population, but they have 15 or let's have 20,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19. And in Rwanda, we have 11 million people, but we have 15,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19. So when we are distributing vaccines, we won't say because US has a larger population, let's give it vaccines. We will also see the risk. So we will also assess, let me finish. We will also assess the impact of the pandemic. So we are saying we're depending on the population, but of course, we are also the mechanism of using the number of infections is in our plan of looking at the population,
right.
both
and
high
you would,
and low, depending on the cases.
Yes, and you would agree that in the resolution it says based on population period, correct? And you provide a definition of population that's based on the number of people and not the number of cases, correct? Okay, so under your definition, so your definitions are very clear. We're basing population means specifically how many people in a country.
I've given the definition of a population. I don't know if you want to go
Awesome. Awesome. So I'm a little confused on the reasoning for how the affirmative gets ground to base their case on the number of cases, not on strictly the population.
So I think I've had enough time to explain that, and I'm going to repeat it for the last time. I said we're advocating according to the according to the population. But of course, you can't take the population and just blind your eyes looking at the infections that are there. Because if we say population, we will also base on the number of infections that are there. That's what we're trying to explain. That's why I gave you an example of the US having 320 million.
Time for cross-examination is up.
And okay, thank you very much.
First speaker opposition, you're welcome.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here debating with you today. And those who are watching, thank you. My name is Maya Lappin, and I am the first speaker on the negative team, arguing that vaccines for COVID-19 should not be divided among countries based on population. Our plan is that vaccines should be divided among countries based on hotspots and COVID-19 deaths per million. Our plan takes into account smaller countries which are being affected by COVID by measuring deaths by COVID per million people in each country. You cannot both distribute vaccines based on population and account for deaths per million at the same time. Deaths per million helps the most nations and the most people. Our first argument is that China hoards vaccines. China has the world's largest population, but they only have 100,000 confirmed cases. This plan gives China a ton of vaccines that they do not need. At best, the vaccines will go to waste, and at worst, China will use the vaccines to blackmail and manipulate their neighboring countries or withhold its usage from minorities or impoverished communities. Our second argument is that hotspots should be targeted first. While our opposing team is making this argument, it's going against the proposition that they are arguing for, that vaccines should be divided solely based on population. Belgium, Slovenia have the highest deaths per million, but lower populations than the bigger countries that they are talking about. Belgium has the highest deaths per million at 1,900 per million. And India has a population of 1.3 billion, but only 114 deaths per million people, over Belgium with a population of around 11.5 million in 2020. Even if Belgium has more deaths per million, at 1,900. Based on population, that would be the way we would distribute it, but it's counterproductive. This is putting lives at risk at the expense of benefiting those who have already been secured from the dangers of COVID-19. Our third argument is that our plan benefits health. According to the Bloomberg opinion, that there is a way to do justice to focus vaccines on geographic hotspots and the elderly. Getting the vaccines to the hard-hitting areas could correct racial disparities that are already appearing in the early rollout of these vaccines. Focusing on geographic hotspots can help minimize the spread of this disease, which will also help minimize the risk of new vaccine-evading variants that can come up. The more the people get infected, the greater the number of viral particles out there, and the greater a number of mutant versions will arise of this COVID-19. And that means that the greater the odds a dangerous variant will spread. This means that if we do not target the hotspots, we are allowing the spread of dangerous variants which cause more deaths, chaos, and havoc. And it also causes more damage to these small suffering countries. When we are talking about the virus being more prevalent in certain areas or hotspots, the marginal difference we are talking about isn't 5 or 10%, but it's 200 or 300% of a difference. Yale epidemiologist Robert Hecht has been studying COVID-19 in Massachusetts and found that the virus is vastly more prevalent in some areas than others. Sending vaccines to hotspots is the fair thing to do, since many people in places with high rates of disease are living in crowded housing and have high-risk jobs, often not by choice. Many members of minority groups who have been disproportionately hurt by the virus and its economic fallout. Demographic data by the CDC suggests that too few vaccines have gone to high-risk people who are Black, American Indian, Alaska Native, or Hispanic. Our plan will prevent this from harming them any further, and additionally, population does not always determine rate of infection. The other team is arguing that if we base it on population, that is the safest or best protocol, but it's not. We need to target these hotspots because they are the vastly spreading places of COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So
Thank you.
I'd like to ask you, do you agree that a big number of people who succumbed to COVID-19 were in largely populated countries?
Yes, but also numerous small countries have been suffering, and their population has taken hits, like I highlighted, in Belgium and Slovenia.
Yeah, I understand. I'm asking, do you agree that a big number of people succumb to COVID-19 are from largely populated countries? Do you agree? A big number, not all of them.
Not per million.
I said yes, but you accept a big number. So the second question, when you're talking about hotspots, do you agree that the most dangerous hotspots are in the highly populated countries because social distancing is not respected, and when the population is high, infections tend to get higher?
Yes, they do as well, but same in the small countries.
Yes.
And the deaths per million is what matters the most here.
Yes,
you can look at statistics, and of course you're going to see more deaths from a higher population because they have more people there. But when you actually look at deaths per million, it's proving that the smaller countries are suffering, and that distributing by population is counterproductive.
Great. Okay. So you agree that in the higher populated countries, more people can die. Then don't you think that your plan is in our plan?
Your plan should just be based on population. So I'm confused why you're addressing both.
We're in both because if you tend to vaccinate some countries which are higher, we're looking at the population, but also basing on the number of infections, because even these hotspots you're talking about are based on the population of the country. So the severity is all about the population, the number.
They're also based on deaths per million and infection, and you're supposed to be arguing solely on population. So again, I'm confused how you can argue both.
But population does not only mean high, it can even mean low. But our approach is population.
The time for cross-examination is over. Let's have the second speaker from affirmative side.
Okay, give me a minute. I'm about to time myself and start from now. Good evening, good morning to everyone. My name is Marcy Joshua, and I'm the second speaker from the proposition side on a motion that states that vaccines for COVID-19 should be divided among countries based on the population. And now for the current cross-sex of the first speaker from the opposition side, they asked her, do you believe, do you agree that large countries have been hit badly, have had many number of deaths due to COVID-19? And her answer was yes. So basically what we're talking about here is that also largely populated nations have been affected, has had a lot of death. So it means they should be dealt with. And ladies and gentlemen, the proposition side here is not coming to, has decided to set a parameter of saying by population, it might be a higher population and a lower population, but based on the number of cases. So basically, it's kind of a pyramid scheme, which a pyramid scheme of two sides. So we'll start, it might be higher population, many infections, risky groups, and then those risky groups are going to get vaccinated. I hope that's one side of the higher population. And then for the other side, which is our plan that I'm trying to explain to the opposition side, which has failed to understand it. And there is another group of the low populations, which are also included in our plan, but which will have many infections. As she was saying, deaths per million, which is Belgium, Slovakia, United Kingdom. By the way, even the United States is topping up in the number, which is a large populated country, which should be given attention. And then from the low population populated countries to the many infections, and then to the risky group, then vaccination. So basically it's a two-in-one, instead of going for one side of the least populated nations, which is the opposition side, which is the one it is talking about. And if the least populated nations will be taken care of, and the highly populated one, it will be a one-sided thing. It will be a one solutions for a big problem, and which won't be sufficient. So what the proposition side is talking about here is bringing on a two-in-one solution of higher populated countries and lower populated countries, but mainly according to the number of infections that we have. So basically what we're talking about here is that the opposition side is talking about the low populated countries. That's one side, but one side won't serve the whole world. And as my first speaker started up saying, he said that once we're all safe, nobody is safe. Maybe as the opposition side is saying, if Belgium is safe and Slovakia is safe and the maybe least populated countries are safe, how about the big nations? If they're not safe, then the virus will keep on spreading around the world. And then it will need another debate like this one to talk about, oh, we've made a mistake. We still have to go back to solve on the problem, while we would have put in place our plan of doing it at the same time. So basically, allow me to go deep in our plans. Ladies and gentlemen, the proposition side here is tackling the population side, because it's kind of a universal side. They talk about something related to China. Yes, China has reduced the number of deaths per million, but it doesn't mean it wasn't hit that bad. The fact that it's reducing right now doesn't mean other countries with highly populated with high population are doing good. Our first speaker has talked about the United States, has talked about Russia, has talked about Brazil, has talked about India, and those are like even big economies. So if we decide to even go for Belgium and Slovakia, are we solving the whole world, or we're just helping a few instead of the whole world? So ladies and gentlemen, as the proposition side, I think this is like a side that we're supposed to give attention and put in action, which is what the proposition side is doing right now. So allow me to end my speech and maybe get to ask some questions from the opposition side.
Team Negative, do you have any questions for cross-examination?
Sure. I have one quick question. So these big nations, we could agree, according to you, have a significant amount of COVID cases. But if economically they are bigger as a nation, shouldn't they be?
Excuse me, there are a lot of cracking in your voice. I don't know if it's for me only, but I think.
All right. You know what? It's fine.
Well, you can proceed with your question though, but if I don't know,
No, it's all good.
you're good. You have no questions.
Yeah.
You can type them at least if you have them. Oh. Any questions from
No more questions?
like other debaters can ask some questions as well.
All right, sorry about that. We do have a couple questions. So as I think my partner was getting to, wouldn't you say that larger countries have are able to have like larger and stronger economies?
Sorry.
Wouldn't you say that larger countries have
Why
larger and
why
stronger
did I say
economies?
that? Why did I say that?
I'm asking you a question about whether or not these countries have larger or stronger economies. That's a simple question.
The countries with larger
Yeah,
population?
if with larger populations, do they have larger and stronger economies?
Well, from the stats, it's China we're talking about here. It's the United States. Even the least populated one you're talking about, which is Belgium, it has a really good economy.
Okay,
So
but you would say on balance, larger population countries have stronger economies.
wait, it's not only larger populated countries with stronger economy, but even less populated. Have you heard of the Scandinavians? Have you
Okay,
heard of
so that's
other European countries? They have really good economies.
okay. Cool. And so you basically say you're going to cover high population and low population. Where in the resolution does it say that you're based on case?
Look, let me make it simple. The opposition side is going for the least populated countries. Yes or no?
No, we're going for deaths per million.
Come on, then
Our counter
basically
plan,
you just contradicted your first
our
speaker.
counter plan
Finish.
states deaths per million.
Then she said death per million, but she also said least populated countries like Belgium. So basically,
because deaths per million translates to smaller countries on balance.
then you just said smaller countries. So death per million, if they're equal to smaller countries, then you're talking about smaller countries.
If their deaths per million is high, they get the vaccine first.
So if you're going for smaller countries with higher death per million, which it is smaller countries, then we're talking about smaller countries and bigger countries. So for us, it's a 2-in-1, and then for you, it's a 1-in-1. So which one would you go for? The 2-in-1 or a 1-in-1?
We're talking specifically about case count and deaths per million. Your ground is specifically on population.
Look, death per million, you just gave Slovakia, Belgium, even Spain. Those are least populated countries comparing to the big nations we're talking about.
Unless you have any new questions, we can proceed to the next speaker.
For sure, we can. Anyways,
awesome.
Thank you for your attention. That was it. Thanks.
Awesome. 5 minutes.
Yes, 5 minutes. You are muted.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming out to today's debate. I'm really glad to be here and debating one. So we're going to first address the negative team's case and then the affirmative team's case. But I want to talk about specifically the ground in today's resolution. I want to recap what today's resolution specifically is. And it says, our resolution is vaccines for COVID-19 should be divided among countries based on population. We're going to be highlighting that phrase based on population because in today's case, the affirmative team has come up and basically said, we're going to be looking at low population and high population countries, but they say that we're basically going to focus on the number of cases in these countries. Now, nowhere in the resolution does it say anything about the case number, about the caseload, anything about cases. It specifically says population. And they don't even connect the definition of population to a specific number of cases. They simply say that a population is a sample drawn from a population, which really isn't the definition of population even then. But basically, they define population as simply the number of people in a country. Nowhere in their case do they give any kind of warrants for how they can go from population to suddenly about the number of cases in each country. Now, specifically on their plan, we have 3 responses. The first is that they don't provide good definitions. They simply don't explain what their population is, how this at least connects to cases. They don't provide any warrants. The second is that they don't state a specific plan. They don't say like a specific phrase of what specifically they're going to do. They're just going to say, we're going to cover everything. If you remember from the last affirmative speech, they're basically talking about how this is a universal fix. They're going to cover everything. But the problem is that this is unfair, which leads us to our third argument, that they take away the negative ground. The negative ground is simple. It's that we can run a counter plan, which an alternative that covers anything but the population, which we have done. We're talking about deaths per million. their ground is specifically population, which I would assume is usually large population to small population or small population to large population. But the problem is they don't have ground to specifically cases and proportions and specifically case numbers. Nowhere in the resolution does it give it. They don't give any warrants for why they should do this other than it would be a good idea. But again, in the debate round, the resolution is very clear. They do not get ground to this, which leads us to the counter plan that we provide, which is, again, we state this very specifically in our first speech. Vaccines should be divided among countries based on the COVID-19 deaths per million. Deaths per million is a great statistic because it's basically we're not focusing on large countries that also have a large number of cases. We're looking specifically at countries that have a high number of deaths per every million of residents. This is very important because this way we're focusing on whatever the dangerous hotspots are. Small countries such as Belgium, such as Slovakia, which are in the top 5 for deaths per million, would be overlooked by because of their population is so low. The affirmative team's plan would not be able to solve this, but because of the negative team, we're focusing on the deaths per million, which means that these smaller countries are also solved. Now, the affirmative team will probably come up and say how we're only focusing on small countries, but that's not true, because in fact, the United Kingdom, which is a pretty large country, is a pretty high economy, is also on that top 10 list of the deaths per million. So this is very fair because we're basically looking at countries that are hit the hardest because of coronavirus. Now, this is important because, as we first said, under the affirmative team's plan, China would be getting a ton of vaccines. Why? Because they have a high population. Nowhere in their resolution, in their case, or the resolution does it say that they can exclude China. This is simply an unfair argument for them to simply say, well, they don't have any cases, so they don't get vaccines. I'm sorry, but they're tied to the resolution, which says that China is the highest population country in the world, which means that they're first in line for vaccines. But again, they have had 0 deaths in the past 7 days, which means that China is really doing really well with this. And this is problematic if we give them vaccines. The other thing is that we're targeting hotspots, dangerous areas, we're targeting them. So to be able to save lives and focus on countries that have the hardest hits by the pandemic. Now, onto their arguments. They have the first argument that they come up with is that vaccinated countries save other countries. But as my partner Maya provided in their first speech, this is very important that we talk about this because we're looking at because hotspots will create the most variants, unlike just large population centers. So it's important that we target that. And greater population on their second argument, again, India is doing fine, while other countries, they might have a high caseload, but other countries are dying on a higher rate, and that's why they need saving with vaccines a lot more importantly than other nations. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have some questions. And do you agree that the countries which happen to have higher deaths per million happen to be the least populated countries? Yes or no?
No.
What's Belgium then? What's Slovenia then? What's Czechia then?
It's a coincidence. But
you're a little bit confused. Don't call it a coincidence, but I think you're confused.
We're looking at basically the stats.
Let me finish my question, and then you have to answer it at the same time. And a quick correction, we didn't say China is on the line. We said higher populated countries with many infections. I don't know how many times we're going to explain that, but that's what we say. So nobody talked about China. But if China happens to be highly populated and have a lot of infections, then China will be a good candidate for that. And then on the second graph of the scheme, we say low population with many infections and target the risky groups and then vaccinate them. I don't know if you're getting what we're saying, but I think you should be a little bit attentive to what we're talking about here.
I would love to answer a question if you have one.
No, you can comment on that because that was a correction.
Okay. All right. So unfortunately, I do not agree with that because you don't get ground to infection rates. Nowhere in the resolution does it say that. You're specifically tied to population. Until you show me a warrant that connects population, the word population, to infection rates and cases.
Does Italy have a high population or not?
Italy?
Italy, yeah.
It has a relative. It's about the middle.
Yeah, we're talking about 60 million, right? Does the United Kingdom has a high population? Yes or no?
Has 4 million people.
The United Kingdom?
Yes.
4
million.
Are you sure? Okay. Does the United States have a high population?
Or I'm sorry. I believe that would be 4 4 million cases. My bad.
Wait, you just said the United Kingdom has 4 million population.
I'm sorry, I misspoke. It's
You
4
take it
million
back?
cases. 4 million cases.
Cross-examination is over unless you have new questions.
Okay, please, Josh, please note that one.
Let's have the next speaker from. Thank you all. Let's have the next speaker from affirmative. Thank you.
Thank you. I am the third speaker from the affirmative, and today's debate is whether or not COVID vaccines should be distributed according to population. Now, my first speaker defined population in two ways. He defined the population that we're going to look at in terms of countries that have higher cases and also countries that have a higher number of people. Why did we choose to go in this way? One, it's because countries that have a higher number of people are more prone to have COVID, increased in so many people. And we do not want this to happen, which is why we're prioritizing that COVID vaccines should be given to these countries with the higher population. Another question that was asked but never, got substance in this debate is they asked whether these larger countries have larger economies. Yes, we agree that they do have larger economies, but what does this have to do? If people are going to die because of COVID, then what's use of this economy if it cannot save the people that are living in these countries? Also, what the opposition side has been blind to is that there are many COVID preventive measures that are already in place, and we're not removing this by providing vaccines to countries that have higher populations and countries that have higher cases. We need to save people, and what we're looking at right now is whether we should distribute COVID vaccines according to population, and we've defined how we're going to look at this population in different countries. The precurrent speaker just asked, how is it a universal fix? We're saving a larger number of people. This debate is whether or not we support that COVID vaccines should be distributed according to the population. This includes small endangered populations and also the larger potentially able to put other countries at risk. We're looking at a global perspective. How are we going to save the world if we do not provide COVID vaccines to larger countries, while also keeping in mind these countries that are endangered, even though they're small? Yeah, this is what this debate has been about. Also, they've been bringing their case has basically been about deaths per million. Now, if you look at this in the global perspective, every death in the world is a death, whether it is per million, whether it is per 1,000, it's a large number. We're looking at how we can stop and reduce these deaths. And it's not by going to vaccinate small countries only. We need to look at a perspective that puts everyone in the world in a safe spot. Also, he talked about how the UK has 4 million people. Yeah. UK has a bigger population, which is why the UK should be among the priority countries that are given vaccines. Yeah, I hope they do understand. Now, why does the proposition side propose that we give vaccinations according to population? One, we're for universal health. And how does this come about? We're saving a larger number of people. We're putting a larger number of people at safety, which is going to, include countries that have high risk and also countries that have a higher population. The COVID, again, I need to stress this, the COVID-19 virus is not controllable. So if it's not controllable, we do not have a say on whether we vaccinate smaller populations or higher populations. We need to look at what's the good that the whole, world is getting through this. Another thing we need to put in mind that, this is a movement that is worldwide. We're not putting any restrictions. Should COVID vaccines be distributed per population? That's the question today. And if the answer is yes, then it means that it's true that COVID vaccines should be given per population. And if the opposition side is opposing to this, they need to give a substantive reasons as to why they do not agree with this. Now, as I would like to end my speech by saying that the best way for the whole world to achieve a globally stable environment, a globally stable economy, a globally stable health is to put into consideration providing COVID vaccines to to the whole world according to population, looking at what each population needs and putting that into account. I would like to open it to cross-ex. Thank you.
So let's have cross-examination.
Yes. Hi. So you agree that it's important to distribute vaccines to highly infected areas, correct?
Yeah, but that's not what we're advocating for. I said the proposition side is advocating that we provide vaccines per population, but also looking at the cases. That's part of it, but it's not the only thing that the proposition side is advocating for today.
Okay. And would you say that it is more important to target those places with vaccines that have higher spreading areas to avoid new vaccine evading variants coming up?
Allow me to answer you with a question as well. Do you agree that these countries that have a higher population also are able to be part of the countries that give a higher spread if we do not help them now, when it's still possible that we, put them in a bubble that does not, spread to the whole world? We're looking at countries that have hundreds of millions of people. And if we do not provide them with vaccines right now, it then means that they're going to be now, a whole would I say threat to the whole world, and we do not want this to happen.
Yes, but there are countries with a large population who have not been nearly as affected or have a hotspot.
Yeah, I understand and I agree, but we do not want to put these countries, we do not want these countries to ever be a threat to the whole world. This is why we're stopping them from ever being able to stop other countries from functioning,
Exactly, so you would want to get those hotspots in highly infected areas, correct?
We're not saying that that's not how it's going to go. But if we're providing vaccines per population, we're not only focusing on these hotspots, okay? We're focusing on the whole world, and the population is entirely about each country. It's not about us to govern.
Okay. All right, thank you.
No more questions?
All right, thank you, Nej. Let's have the third speaker from the negative side.
All right, I will start my time now. Hello, everyone. Firstly, I'd like to start off by addressing the affirmatives points. So they start off by saying that they're serving a larger number of people, yet I'd like to make this clear, and they're saving more lives, but I think that we save more lives because we actually give numbers and we show that deaths per million is not relative to the amount of people in a country. We are able to save more lives by focusing on these smaller countries which have higher deaths per million. Belgium has more deaths per million at 1,900 than India at only around 100 or so. This is significant because Belgium has to deal with all of the negative impacts which come with the COVID cases, which India, with a stronger economy, doesn't have to go with. What we were getting at is that these countries with bigger nations have stronger economies, therefore they are able to provide for their people more because they have better economic status, whereas these smaller countries are not able to do so. They are struggling and they have to deal with tag argument 3, all of the negative impacts that come with health. And this means that if we do not target these hotspots, especially these smaller countries, we're allowing different dangerous variants of and mutations to spread if the number only continues to increase in these smaller countries. Judge, we see that these smaller countries aren't able to protect themselves like these bigger countries with stronger economic status, as we have agreed on in this debate. That's why we need to focus on these smaller countries and deaths per million, because we are allowed to be able to fix the true issue at hand. These smaller countries matter too. They say that they're solving for a worldwide issue, yet they aren't taking into account the small countries which actually have more deaths per billion and are actually struggling from it more. We see China had 0 cases in the last 7 days, yet they don't bring that up. They don't bring that up at all. They have to be able to provide to China because that is in the resolution. It is one of the highest populated countries, therefore they have to give the vaccines. Whereas we are neglecting these smaller countries which have no grounds to protect themselves. They are economically struggling and they have to deal with the negative impacts health-wise that they are not able to deal with. And population is not equal case numbers, as I've stated again. That has been proven with China and how they only have had 0 deaths in the last 7 days. And secondly, we solve for the hardest hit countries because we save more lives. The health negative impacts, all the mutations and all the severities and stuff will only continue to increase in these smaller countries because they do not have the economic support which these bigger nations do to be able to solve for it. And they also bring up how higher population will create more spread. Yet this isn't. Yet we see that the same point applies to our side as well, because if the deaths per million are higher in these smaller countries, it would only continue to grow in our small nations as well, and they would only be hurt by the impacts more because they do not have economical support to be able to solve for those issues. On to my next. Onto some other points they make. They say that they save more people and that the whole world, it will struggle and whatnot. Yet I've already disproved this, as we've seen with the fact that the small countries have more deaths per million and the bigger nations are already economically able to support themselves, whereas these smaller nations will be more susceptible to the health impacts, which we will not be able to solve because they are not economically inclined to be able to do so. China, India, US all have the economic foundation to be able to fix these issues, whereas these smaller countries with significantly more deaths per million are not able to do so. I'd like to extend on our benefits health argument, which is really significant in this debate, because we see how if the virus is prevalent in more areas, that it's only going to continue to grow by up to 200 or 300%, according to a Yale epidemiologist. So what this means is that essentially in these smaller countries, the virus is only going to continue to grow more and more because the deaths per billion is higher. And I'd also like to touch on how they still believe that population applies to them in both high and low. They think that they believe that they can solve for both the high populations and the low populations. Yet this judge, you cannot grant them this because this takes away all of our ground on our plan. Because as my partner stated initially, this gives they have no warrant to be able to connect this population the population to the COVID cases, whereas we are able to do so because we bring up the counter plan. This is a debate based on population. They have to stick to that resolution, and they cannot skew that away from us. As my partner Ian beautifully mentioned, they have to cover everything that is in the resolution, and they cannot take the negatives ground, which covers the alternative. Judge, for the reasons that the smaller countries are suffering more and that they don't have the economic support to be able to solve for the health issues which come from having more deaths, you should vote for the negative. And also, you should not grant them this. You should not grant them grounds for low populations, because COVID cases and population are two substantially different things, and that is why you should vote for the negative today. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. Any questions for the third speaker negative?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
I would like the current speaker to answer if the virus spread of COVID is controllable.
Controllable? So, like, what do you mean?
I mean, do we have the means to control the scope of COVID today?
Well, I think that's what the vaccines are being for. And I think if we have vaccines, we'd be able to solve for the spread of it in these hotspots in these smaller countries, as I mentioned, with higher deaths per million. Let me finish. So we have more, if we have more deaths per million in these countries, we are able to solve for it better. And therefore, we can solve it.
In a global perspective, how many people die? Are they in the smaller countries or in the larger countries?
Well, that's why we were sticking with deaths per million. It's because we were saying that these smaller countries like Belgium have more deaths per million at 1900 than India at 114. And I think we can both agree that India has a much higher population than Belgium.
Do you agree that a larger number of people died in largely populated countries because of COVID?
Because as I gave the India example just now.
Can I ask a question? Does the US have a higher number of deaths per million as well? Yes or no?
I don't know.
You should know, because the US is the 5th on the list of today. So basically it is, and it's a high populated country. So if you're talking about deaths per million, then high populated countries should be included. And secondly, you talked about how these highly populated countries have big economies, and at the end of the day, and Belgium has a really good economy, the UK has a good economy, and I think that's a contradiction to your side. If you're talking about these big economies, these highly populated countries having big economies, and talking about Belgium having a bad economy, you're wrong. Aren't you?
Okay.
Yes, you are. You agree?
Was that a question?
Yeah, I'm asking you if you agree.
Well, I think it was more so a comment on your argument. I'm not going to comment on that.
So you agree? Thank you.
If we do not have any more questions, you are going to have 2 minutes to prepare for a reply speech, and then so then we'll have reply speeches from both sides, starting with the negative, and the reply speeches will have 3 minutes, and there will be no cross-examination. So basically a summary of what you said and what the other side said, and why we should go for your side. Like, why should we vote for you, right? So your 2 minutes of preparing for the reply speech starts now. Your time is up. Let's have the opposition with the reply speech. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. The affirmative team is arguing against the resolution that they have been given. Population does not equal case numbers. They do not have the grounds to discuss case numbers. What we are arguing for is that our plan is taking into account smaller countries which are being affected by COVID by measuring deaths per million. We are not excluding countries with a high population. We are merely targeting hotspots and places that spread vastly. We aren't saying that the United States shouldn't be given vaccines or aren't important. Even with that country, they have hotspots inside of it that need to be taken care of before others. China has the world's largest population, but other countries that are dying at more alarming rates need vaccines better than them. Again, they only have 100,000 cases compared to their population. Our plan is to target to help the world globally, but we are trying to do so in the most beneficial and productive way possible. We are not solely concentrating on smaller countries, but rather arguing that we should advocate for these smaller countries by addressing the deaths per million and by places that have been hit hard, but it does not solely focus on them. We are focusing on geographic hotspots that will help spread help minimize the spread of disease, which is arguably the most important factor here. We are trying to get rid of this global pandemic. And by doing so, we need to address the places that are spreading more vastly. That is arguably the most important thing. If we do not target hotspots, we are allowing the spread of and manifestation of dangerous variants. This is counterproductive. If we vaccinate China over the US or Belgium, where places are like continuously coming up with new variants of this disease and spreading, we're not doing our job properly. We are highlighting how it is more important to address hotspots over population. Our opposing team is arguing that it should solely be based on population. Yes, it is important to address those countries with a high population, but that is because some of those countries do have hotspots. Our goal is to globally vaccinate in the most productive way possible, and our plan is arguably the most productive way possible. It would be an injustice to address those with a larger population but less deaths per million. Should we let innocent people die? It is vital that we address the hotspots to decrease new variants and further spread. We save more lives by saving the hardest hit countries first. Again, I would like to highlight our arguments. First, we argue that China hoards vaccines, and we gave the example that China has a huge population, yet they should not be the ones who get the vaccines first. Secondly, hotspots and deaths per million should be targeted first. And lastly, this extremely benefits us globally health-wise. If we do not target hotspots, we are allowing the spread of dangerous variants, which causes more death, chaos, and havoc. This also causes more damage to smaller countries who can't redeem themselves like those of a large country with a huge economy. Again, when we are talking about the virus being more prevalent in certain areas, we are talking about a 200 or 3,000% difference. Let that settle in. Thank you all. It has been a pleasure debating with you today.
Thank you. Let's have the proposition.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for this opportunity. It's raining in Kigali. I don't know if you'll be able to hear me, but we were very, very astonished by the plan of this side of our opponents. First, their plan was deaths per million. But ladies and gentlemen, every death counts. We shouldn't have deaths per million, even if it is death per thousands or death per hundred, it all counts. I don't understand what this plan is. Second, is they had a contradiction. They started saying that they are advocating for the plan of hotspots, but later on they changed and went to deaths per million. So it's a kind of confusion that we did not understand what it was really explaining. And second, we've realized as they keep explaining themselves, they reached a point where they were explaining that deaths per million focuses on the countries with lower population, which is really unfair. There are countries with lower population, but we have given them a list of countries with high population, and yet they were countries which were highly affected. And ladies and gentlemen, we also brought in our plan of having basing on the population. But all of them, unfortunately, they were claiming it as if it is a confusion. The first speaker explained it, the second one, the third one. And what kind of student are you if you're not getting what three teachers are saying on the same topic? Ladies and gentlemen, this should be clear. And this, as the judge has said, why we should vote for our side. Why? I'm wondering, why should you go against our side? Our side is what the CDC in America has decided during the vaccine distribution, of course. Our side is what the World Health Organization mechanism that has been adopted. Why should you go against all of that? And those are decision makers in the healthcare industry around the world. Second, they've talked about the population. We're advocating for population and not the cases. What do you mean if we are advocating for the population but not the cases? Of course, we are looking at the population because the population has had an influence in the cases. So we are not doing a census. It's the population, but of course cases, because the highly populated countries are the one at risk. And ladies and gentlemen, we are advocating for you to come on our side, because our side is the one that has been decided by the healthcare decision makers, by the CDC in America, and by the World Health Organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll give Jean-Michel time to speak to say something before we we conclude. Thank you.
All right, thank you to all the debaters, wherever you are. If you can just send some snaps or just reactions so that we thank them for a very informative debate. This was a very timely debate, and a lot of these ideas, I hope a lot of people were able to follow. Before we continue, I would like to give the word to Bill. Bill is he's a friend of ours, and he has been a partner in making sure that we, even in a pandemic, we're able to create events that require us to dialogue with people from across the world. So Bill, just say a few words, and yeah.
Sure. Thank you. As he said, I'm Bill Neeson. I am the one of the co-directors at Irvine Valley College. I also need to thank my other co-director who did more of the work putting this together, Jules Throckmorton French. She did a lot of the setup, working with Jean-Michel to get this set up, and I think this is amazing. I need to thank iDebate and all the other countries that participated. It's so amazing to have 5 different countries participating in debate over Zoom. I can't say enough, because really this combines 2 of my favorite things, right? Obviously, being a debate coach, the first thing's debate. Debate is such an amazing event. It teaches us critical thinking, how to shape an argument, how to support our argument, how to talk to other people, right? Which is amazing, but it also teaches us to look at the other side and have civil disagreements. From where I am at in the United States, I think learning to have a little more civil disagreements would be great. So I think more people should do debate. And I'm so happy everybody, across the world is doing different forms of debate. They're all amazing. The other thing it combines is intercultural communication. That's something I do teach. And I think that having other cultures and seeing what other people's lives are like and talking to other people just cannot be understated. Learning about other people is so amazing. So I'm very excited that we were able to do this. I'm excited that we had a bunch of people. We should also thank all the people who came to watch it here on Zoom, all the people who are watching it currently on YouTube Live. It's an amazing event, and I'm so excited we got to do this. Finally, I'm going to take it back to the judges and thank them. Being a judge in a debate is a double-edged sword sometimes. It's not always the most fun, but it's interesting. And so I'd like to thank the judges and let them take it away, or Jean-Michel, if he has anything else.
Thank you, Bill. And also, of course, thank you to all the others who have worked with us to make this happen. And just like Bill has said, the most beautiful, I wish all our political and, political debates were this civil. And I would like to remind anyone who wasn't around who was here for the first time, that usually the passion takes over, but at the end of the day, we always want for these debates to be civil and for people to respect one another. So I'll give it back to Elnam to give us the verdict for this debate and a few comments for both sides, and then we'll stop it from there. Elnam, take it over.
Thank you, Jean-Michel. I hope you all can hear me, because it's raining here, so I don't know. Can you hear me?
Very well.
All right. So first off, thank you all for debating and the different arguments. And as we said, let this not stay here. Let us take the skills and the knowledge we get from debate in every aspect of our lives. So first off, the debate was whether or not we should give vaccines to countries based on their populations. So basically, the proposition side was supposed to tell us why we should give vaccines to countries based on the populations, and the negative side was supposed to come up with a counter plan, which they did. So basically, the main points of clash were that the proposition was talking about how they're going to base their distribution of COVID vaccine on population and on the number of cases, while the negative side came here telling us that they were going to distribute the COVID vaccine based on the places that have the countries that have more deaths per million and the hotspots. And then the negative kept on, the benefits of their plan, of the negative plan, was to correct racial disparities, because I don't know, like they kept telling us more impact of their plan, which also the opposition did. So without taking much of your time, so the opposition came here and defended the resolution, which is, you know, distributing by the number of highest populations. But then they made it unfair for the opposition because they also took another plan, which was, you know, based on the number of cases, which is unfair. Because if we're going to debate on, like, you're supposed to be solely based on to defend the population. You were only supposed to defend that, but then you made it unfair for the opposition team. While the opposition team were quite clear on how they're going to do it, and then you kept asking them why are they only considering small countries, but they made it clear that their basis is not only countries, like the highest population. Their basis was the death per million and the places which have more hotspots, like the places with more cases and more deaths per million. So the negative side has more benefits because they're looking at hotspots, and the opposition went beyond the motion, therefore they lose the debate. So this debate is won by the proposition because they stood in their line, right? So they did what they were supposed to do, but because the proposition went beyond and tackled what they were not supposed to tackle, and they were not even able to defend why we should distribute according to just population, like solely on population. That's why they do not take the debate. So congratulations on Team USA, you win this debate. And for everyone else watching, thank you for watching us. And Jean-Michel, I give back the speech to you. Thank you.
Just to make sure I understood. So the debate was won by Team USA. Yeah, okay, great. So Team USA, congratulations on a very great debate. This was really interesting. Can we ask Team USA to maybe put on their camera so we can view them and congratulate them? All right, so congratulations. This was a very, very great debate. I loved all the ideas, and also thank you all for participating in this debate. I know you had to wake up at 7. You had to be debating at 7 in the morning. Nobody wants to debate at 7 in the morning, but we're glad that you were able to do that. And congratulations to all the speakers and everyone who came. This was a great event, and we thank you all. Thank you, Elnam, for the judging, and have a fantastic day for all the ones who are in the US, and then evening for the ones who are here in Kigali. Have a great evening, everyone, and good job to Team USA. Congratulations.
Thank you, and I just want to extend another congratulations to Team Rwanda. It was great debating you guys. It was a really fun debate, and I'm glad that we had this opportunity.
Yeah, we also had fun debating with you guys.
Yeah, I had a great time. Also, my name is Gautam. So it's Gautam Krishna Kumar. So,
mine is Joshua as well.
Yeah.
And
I can say your name, right? Awesome.
So good to see you guys. See you in
Yeah.
It was good debating with you.
All right, Rabbi, I also joined from, some of you might join from Cairo, so it was nice watching this. Thank you.